No.
You have a foot phone too? I thought I was the only one with a foot phone.
You mean, does this clash with the one you have?
So when my nieces would come up to the cottage,
I thought it was really special and unique.
So sometimes there would be like 6 or 7 of them up at the same time, and they would range from like 2 to, I don't know, 12, 13. So then if they were just sitting around getting bored, I would go bring, bring. And I go, whose phone is that? And I grab the kid's foot and I put the phone up to my ear and I go, hello, who's this? Well, next thing you know, the kids are all lining up to have their foot phone ring. I thought you were joking. I didn't realize that was wired in.
Well, the thing is, so much for my unique sense of humor when everybody else is bloody doing it already.
Yeah, but did you see how fast I jumped on that?
Gone.
Did you see how fast I jumped on that? You got a foot phone?
That's half of my joke gone. Here, right.
That's okay.
I feel
but you can still practice it on people.
And she's Sandy Glaze, and she's from the imperial colonies and royal kingdom of a dodgy place called Canada, run by a dodgy banker who's fleeced us and done all sorts of things. Now that you got rid of that Trudeau guy, and there's a whole pile of stuff out about
we did not get rid of Trudeau. Carney's not in charge. Carney is a henchman. That's my opinion.
Ladies and gentlemen, take it away, Sandy.
So you asked to talk about 3 things. You asked to talk about Mars. You asked to talk about Canada and war on Monday. So what I find is interesting right now, Canada is absolutely, Canadians are losing their, I'm going to use the word equilibrium when it comes to discerning logic, when it comes to being in a balanced energy, when it comes to being in 0 point energy and observing. So what is happening, and I remember seeing this in high school, and I lived in the Hicks when I was growing up, but I remember people in the town I lived in, the ones who lived on one side of the tracks would judge the other ones on the other side of the tracks. And I'm thinking, good thing I get busted, because I was probably even lower on the totem pole than both of those city mice. Like, who cares, right? But you just sit there and you watch, and what we're seeing is more of that now. So as more disclosure comes out, so I wanted to kind of tie a lot of this back in, but as more disclosure comes out, we're watching people absolutely revert to their childhood coping mechanisms. I'm not saying they're in diapers. Some of them maybe should be, but they're going back to almost like a tribalism. I hate the ism word. And an example, I live in a region where there's 3 cities and 4 townships, and they're trying to expropriate land that's by an aquifer that holds 85% of our groundwater. I'm not going to go into all the water and all that.
That's interesting, because one of the things about Iraq or Iran is that they're running out of water.
So we don't quite know the reasons why. So hang on, I'm not going to go into Iran. So we understand that wasn't planning on going here today, but we understand that what we know about the water system is not accurate. It is just what they want us to see. So they talk about groundwater, and they talk about wastewater treatment plants that put the cleansed water, toilet to tap, back into the aquifers. But now they're heating up the sewage line. So they're making the water that comes out of the wastewater plant 2 degrees higher. Do you think that's going to increase bacteria in the water? So there's a lot of head games being played. So you're saying Iraq is running out of water. Understand that what they call these elites, or Iran. So understand what they're calling these elites. They're psychopaths. And it does not matter. So I'm not judging. I'm just I don't like using labels, but there is a spectrum of dysfunction, that the end game is the psychopath, the sociopath, the narcissist, the shame-based person, the enabler. Then you get to the healthy person, which is few and far between. Often it's the victim on the other side of that. If one more mental health monkey says, hurt people. No, that's just what you say to keep everybody confused. In the mental health community, my understanding is you do not get paid to diagnose somebody with a mental disorder that's hurtful, like psychopath or sociopath. So everybody's got to be a victim. Like, the whole system needs to collapse. Let's go back to the water. So now what they're saying, they're ramming through the immigration. You're going through this in the UK. US is trying to peel it back. I don't remember what Australia is doing. I kind of specialize as a generalist. I go in and watch this, but it's not until something moves and shakes that I actually go in and have a look. But because by then people have gone and analyzed it, and then I can start to get my head around it and decide using my own discernment where I'm going to go to finish up the information. So we're told here one of the aquifers is down to half mast. And they had a council meeting last week. So they don't want me out in this township because you're not from Wilmot, Sandy. And I'm like, go put your diaper back on, old girl. Like they believe everything out there, but you have to be one of them. And I'm like, 85% of my water comes from there too. Well, the last council meeting, the one fellow came out and he said, we've got to get everybody from all the cities in on this. And I'm like, oh, so what you mean is you need an expert to come out and say why they shouldn't take these 770 acres of farmland that's right beside the aquifer. Experts got us into this mess. It doesn't matter if it's this. It doesn't matter if it was lockdowns. It doesn't matter if it's the food supply. It doesn't matter if it's the chemtrails. The experts are the ones that got us in. And I hope I'm not jumping around too much, but I look at this again, it doesn't matter where you are in the spectrum of knowledge. Knowledge and education are two different things. Education is just something you've had programmed and pumped into you. When you have that innate knowing that you go, that doesn't make any sense. That's a different type of, I'm going to call that knowing, remembering, or connecting. But what we've got are all these people still want the experts. Canada's, I'm not going to say doomed, but Canada is so immature on the line of actually trying to come up with viable explanations for things. So when I go to some of these meetings and I explain certain things, they don't want to talk about it. You're going to talk about it one way or the other, but you might as well get your nervous system acclimatized to what's happening. So I've kind of stepped back for a few reasons. You don't want my help, have it your way. Like, I honestly don't care. And that's one thing, you talked about the secret space program, people that you're hoping were going to join us today. But one thing that we have to realize, we have to let go of all outcomes. And I'm not just targeting that group of people as one group. I mean, every individual, we have to be able to use our discernment and start looking and questioning everything. So we talked a little bit beforehand. The only secret space program soldier I worked with was, I think, back in 2018. And I was asked to be on an interview with, I think his name is Hugh Riley from that channel down on Bay Street. I did the interview in the afternoon.
You're talking City TV?
I don't think he's City TV. It's his own channel. I'm not sure if he's still doing interviews. I know a few people that I know who have been on. John Z is one of my doubters. I can never pronounce his last name, but he showed the G technology, how you take copper formed Gs and put them in the four corners of your house, north, south, east, west, and it can ward off electromagnetic frequency. He was on his show. So there's different people that I know of who have been on that show. It's been a while. I think it was 2018 when I was on there. But that night, so this is interesting with the secret space program and why sometimes it's better to come in raw and not knowing with no preconceived notions. So there's probably some of them right now who are popping arteries going, what does she know? She hasn't been there. I'm not saying I have, but I've gone into the energy of somebody who was. So that night they had an experiencers meeting, and they had 25, and they were recording that too. But they had, and I thought I was just going to explain what I do: clearing emotions, identifying energy, identifying what is yours, what's not yours. This is what I thought my presentation was to be about. And I was as they're coming in, I'm at the door with the host or the convener, and people come in and tell me who they were. Some of them were skeptical. I'm watching them watch me, and I'm like, okay, I'm on. I don't care, right? That's their right to be skeptical. This one fellow comes in, shakes my hand, and goes, just so you know, I've killed people. I looked at the convener and I said, I don't know if I can handle this. She goes, don't you judge us. So I'm sitting here thinking, okay, the cameras are rolling, Sandy, suck it up, buttercup, just deal with this. So I start explaining it, and the convener goes, Sandy, would it be better if you worked with somebody so we can see what you do as you're clearing somebody? And I'm like, Okay, but there's 25 people in the room. Some of this stuff can be sensitive when you're opening up energy fields. Well, guess who volunteered? That guy who when I came in, told me he had killed a few people. So I was doing the emotion code was what I was showing them, how to clear energies, hoping that's showing. So you can get this online. It's you buy the program, but you can get that sheet online, or
Sorry,
so you can just
where do you
Google it
buy
and look
that
up. So
online?
I bought the body code program.
And sorry,
So the body
just as you've shown that, I'd like to you to think about what Kennedy's done with the health tree in the States.
So I haven't really looked at that, but what they're doing is changing all the symbolisms. So this has nothing to do with what Kennedy is doing. So do I think he's doing a good job? Sure. Do I know everything? Not a chance. Do I care? Not really. But the idea is that we all learn our own discernment to see if that makes sense. So what I'm finding is that people are asking, what do you think of this person? What do you think of that person? It doesn't matter. What do you think? In the example, so I used emotion code on this guy, knowing I had to keep him from having a breakthrough where he breaks down on film. I don't want the people in the room to get any information on him that really wasn't any of their business. I should never have been clearing him in that environment. So I thought, okay, how am I going to do this? So I went through and I went in very superficial, and I asked what where his true cause was for how he felt. He was mad. He was angry. And I go, what's your true cause? And I go, column A, column B, even number, or odd number, even number. And I started breaking through all of these things. And I go, where's your anger? And I couldn't sense it in his body. Like normally you can sense it. I can feel things in people's backs, in their necks, their occipital bones. I can go, you've got a problem here. And they'll go, yeah, I've got a pain in my neck or whatever. But I couldn't feel his. And I go, where's your anger? So finally I decided to ask, is it past tense, present tense, or future tense? I go, your anger's in the future. He goes, do you think they don't know they're going to put me in play again? He was very upset. So he goes, you think I haven't done things? And he said things to kids. He had to do things to kids, is what he said. I can't verify that, so and there's nobody to report it to. But anyway, so we started clearing this anger, and I said, you got to get back in touch with your soul. And when we started to look for a soul, I go, where's your soul? I can't find your soul. And there is this different connection. That's why they want people hating what they call God, whatever you call it, source, light, universe, God, whatever you call it, that does not matter. That's your interpretation of it, but you need that connection. And when I asked him about where his soul was, I said, call your soul home. And I've done this with different people on the 3D plane. Where's your soul? It's 30 feet outside that window. Where's your soul? It's in the, we had a cold storage. My soul's in the cold storage of the house I used to live in when I was a kid. So people can sense where their soul is. This guy couldn't. And I kept saying, call your soul back. He goes, I can't. I go, why? He goes, they put it in a container. I can't access it. I go, take a hammer to it and break it. He goes, I can't. So do you remember that movie, Jupiter Rising?
Yes, very important film.
Yes. So at one point they had the people who could walk through dimensions. So they had the mother, whether she was a queen. I can't say I recall.
The innocuous lady who seemed was the queen. That was the point.
Yes. And she had two sons.
Right. Okay.
And one of them was talking about adrenochrome, and they broke it. They broke the canister. But he's saying that's where his soul was. I'm not saying it tied to the chrome. I'm not saying that. But his soul was locked away in a container. And I think that happens a lot with the secret space program people. Their soul disassociates. So we think it's gone and we can't find it. Who says somebody doesn't grab that soul and do something with it and contain it? So then that's what part of the problem is, our spiritual lack of connection that we're experiencing in time right now, because we can't access our souls. So that's, I just wanted to give that. So he was on with James. We talked about this Rink or Ring.
Yeah, James Rink.
Yeah.
When was this? Because he was.
I would say probably 2018,
Oh,
2000,
right,
I'd
yeah.
say 19 to 20, 21 in that time. But I can't remember his name. And they did not publish the recording from the evening. They did not publish that. But what was really interesting was his anger was in the future. He knew they were putting him in play again. So his intuition was there. He had his memories. I didn't go into them because, like I said, there's 20 some odd people in the room. You can't go and expose somebody in an audience that's being recorded. Like the convener, she should have maybe thought that through. I don't know. I'm not judging. It doesn't matter. But my point is, he knew. But when I watched him with James Ring, he described a chair that they made him sit in and they tied him down into. I got the impression James didn't believe him because he was speaking in third person. He kind of did that with me. So it sounds like you're telling a story, you're recanting a story. So I get where James was coming from. I think this guy was doing it just to keep his act together. So I can't remember if he drew me a crude diagram of that chair or not, but he said they tie him into those things. So let's go back to, we kind of got off topic a bit about the water, but when we talk about energy work and dimension, so you've asked that you want the secret space people to be able to understanding what's happening in the 3D. We need everybody right now. So I look at some of the secret space program stories. Maybe some of them I align with, maybe some I don't. Maybe some I just listen to and I think I need another verification, or I'm focusing on other things. I'm not ready to go and explore that yet. It doesn't mean people have to be right or wrong, is what I'm trying to say. But we live in this immature society. Now, if you don't want Donald Trump in jail, you're a pie hole. If you don't want Mark Carney in jail, you're a pie hole. Why don't we all sit back and just watch what is unfolding? We're never going to get the full picture. There are so many agendas out there. There's a fellow I like in Canada. I'm not going to say his name. And they come out and they talk about the 51st state. I'm like, I'm in. This or something better. Like, I don't see any leadership in Canada. 51st state or something better. Trump says we can keep the national anthem. We can keep the flag as if it was a state flag. Give us this or something better. I honestly don't care. But
But
now it turns out.
not the plan for the New World Order? This plan that was announced, Stuart Sverdlow, a number of other people have announced, where the future is, that's what the plan, North and South America is one state, one zone.
One zone.
Right. Africa is another zone. The area around the Mediterranean is Arab. Europe is controlled by Russia, and that extends the whole way to
Europe is Eurozone. Australia
yeah,
is
but
called Oceania.
no. At the point about Australia on this map, point about Australia and New Zealand, they're governed by China, but given autonomy like they did with Hong Kong. India will be it, and so then essentially all the so-called Trump is doing is when they talk about Canada, the 51st state, the whole thing's one state. That's why the whole thing down to South America is all going to be one state.
So
one
when we
zone
look at,
as opposed to state. It's the 51st state's always been known as Britain anyway, because of the special relationship.
So here's the what I'm talking about identifying. So it's not identity politics. It's not about that, but identifying. Australia says we're the 51st state. UK says we're the 51st state. Some Canadians say we're the 51st state. Greenland is saying they're the 51st state. Pick a number. What does it matter? So when I don't look at things. I try to do some of my own research, but I verify with other people. Sometimes, so this guy who was posting this man's videos, I'm watching when he's talking about the 51st state. He's so hung up in the history back in 2000 or 12, the 1200s, the 1700s, the 1800s. Who cares? He's talking about constitutions. But what then I find out is I'm making comments on this one podcast they have, and don't ask me for it. I'm not telling anybody because I'm not endorsing this. Then I find out about 5 podcasts later, he's starting his own political party in Canada. We need another political party, like we need a hole in the head. But it was the manipulation. Let's talk about the 51st state. Oh, now we're going to talk about Dave leading this party. And I'm like, don't contact me. So I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I am not there right now. I don't believe in any of the political parties in Canada. I don't believe in any of the political parties in, I'm going to say, Ontario. It doesn't mean there's not the odd good person. They just don't have the clout or the power because this agenda has been so well orchestrated, but it needs a lot of naive people who are emotionally immature, who are still worried about what team they're cheering on over what's right for them, what's in their best interest. They can't discern the logic. So I know you kind of jump around sometimes and you don't throw me off, but you make me go back. So you're talking about these zones. In 2013, Paul Martin, he was the Prime Minister in Canada. He passed the North American Sustainability and Personal Prosperity Act of North America. Woo, isn't that a mouthful? Stephen Harper was just talking about Paul Martin because now they're bringing out Harper, Chrétien, they're bringing out all the bigwigs to say Canada needs to stay united. Well, quit screwing the people and maybe they'll have some loyalty to you. Hello. But my point is back then, I think that's when we became the 51st state. And I think that's why Trump is trolling Canada. Because he's saying, you want to be the 51st state? Yeah, but you're going to do it my way. Does it matter? There's no other option in Canada. So you talk about Trump taking over the Americas in Greenland. He has to take over Greenland. You guys can benefit. The UK can benefit. I think it's Ireland.
No, hold on here. The reason why that's happening is because Canada severed all their contracts with the United States on all the metals and mining. They just stopped. They just tore the whole lot up about 2 weeks ago.
So we're going to come into Carney in a minute.
Yeah. Okay.
So I look at what, and I don't know what news you get because they're trying to censor some provinces on X that you can't access. Elon Musk. So Canada's really starting to show I hate the word incoherence, but they're showing they're not consistent in their thinking or their strategy. So Mark Carney takes off to China, comes back and says, we're getting 49,000 electric vehicles built by the Chinese. Doug Ford loses it. But before that, Doug Ford, the premier of Ontario.
Well, that's because all the rare earth metals and all the stuff that Detroit can't make them.
So, okay, so I'm not going to agree with you on that. Okay, so it doesn't matter. It's okay that we don't agree. It doesn't mean anybody.
Well, that's right what I've heard. That all the United States contracts with mining and all the Canadian major metals and mining things have all been torn up.
So again, here's where we use our discernment. So what's happened? I watch people I don't really care for sometimes because you learn as much from them by what they say or don't say as you learn from people that you feel aligned with. I don't sit out here in Canada and hold hands and sing Kumbaya with anybody.
Yeah, but it's a rhetorical thing. Has that happened?
So who knows? None of us know.
Yeah, okay.
You don't put anything past Carney. He hasn't finished blowing himself up yet. If Britain wants him back to be your Bank of Kent or Bank of UK, let us know. We'll do a GoFundMe page and get him all set up, right? So Carney's company is in the United States. Carney's company, Brookfield, is in the United States, so he can dodge taxes in Canada. His wife supposedly and kids are in the United States, but he's in bed with China. So let's go back to what you said about the minerals. Sometimes, again, you come in with questions and throw off. So,
well, no, it's in response to a statement you just made about the Greenland, and that is why they need Greenland to get their rare earths.
Okay, so that is one theory that's out there.
Yeah, well, that's
what if it's 100% true?
It's just
what if it's
rhetorical.
50% true?
Yeah.
What if it's 10% true? It doesn't matter. I'm not of that opinion with Greenland because, again, I did a map with you. I called it the Great Lakes and I screwed up a little bit on it. So I don't want to get ahead of myself. But anyways, when I'm looking at this, they brought foreigners. So they brought immigrants in, whether they were legal or not. I think this was back in 2017. I'm not making judgment about foreigners. I'm not doing that. But they had 4 cities in Ontario that they were populating: Sudbury, Sault Ste. Marie, North Bay, Timmins 5, and Thunder Bay. So when you look up by Timmins, there's a town called Cobalt. Cobalt mines cobalt. Well, you need that for EVs. So when you look at Thunder Bay, they've had UN people prostituting First Nations from Thunder Bay to Duluth, like UN workers. But when you look at getting close to the Winnipeg border, that's where they have massive lithium mines. Guess where they're going to be processing it? At their plant in Thunder Bay. Thunder Bay is on the Great Lakes that can get this stuff to the United States. Sudbury has the nickel. So I sit here and I think, and they all think they're smart. Ford and Trudeau at the time think they're smart. They're behind the podium saying, we're going to create jobs. Yeah, with a lot of people who might not speak English and don't understand the dangers that they are putting themselves in by mining these harmful chemicals. I'm not saying nickel is harmful. I don't know what the accident rate is on the nickel mines. My point is, so when we look at Greenland, let's go back to Greenland. So this is why I talk about discernment. How many theories have we been given so far about what's really going on in Greenland? Is it going to matter at the end of the day? It's going to be done. Hang on, I hear you. Even though you didn't say anything, but my point is it going to matter? So I look at some of the things that I've seen, and there's an infrastructure map that goes across all of the cities. I think there's, I can't remember if there's 200 or 2,000 cities. I think it's 200 in Canada that they've got mandates. So Waterloo region is young children. Halton region is EV charging stations. So that's right down the 401 corridor. I can't remember everything that's going on in Toronto. Niagara has its own region. I think it has 16 municipalities. People are in here telling me, oh, I delegated at this township. And I'm like, you're so full of shit. You've got Windsor and you've got Detroit. That's all blocked off with whatever mandates. Is that going to be automotive? I don't know. So they've got all of these areas blocked off in southwestern Ontario. But when you start looking, I'm only focusing on southwestern Ontario for the most part. But when you start going through, and it's an interactive map, you start scrolling. It's all on the Trans-Canada Highway. Ontario gets to the 400 series highways, whether it's 401, 400. That's where all the human trafficking comes in across the Ambassador Bridge from Detroit to Windsor. Human trafficking comes in, all the smuggling comes into Canada. And I'd assume vice versa through that port. That's a big port, supposedly. When you start going out to, I'm really not bad with my geography. I'm not great at geography in the Western provinces. But when you start going up, you go up to Kenora, Trans-Canada Highway. You start going up that way. And then you go through Winnipeg. They only have one, Manitoba. Winnipeg is the only city or region that has these mandates. These mandates, they were given $50 million for these projects, a $10 million project, or a $5 million project, depending on how important they were. Then you go into Saskatchewan. I can't remember. I think it goes into Regina. Where's the Trans-Canada go? You get into Alberta. It goes to Calgary, and then it goes up to Edmonton. I don't think it comes back down anywhere else. I think it has to come back to Calgary. And then you go over to BC. Vancouver has 20 of these areas. What's the population of Vancouver? I don't know. But they have 20 of these mandates where all the governments are trying to push through these agendas. This is what people are not recognizing. So I listen to Daniel Smith. Do you like Daniel Smith? You don't like Daniel Smith? I don't care.
Tell people who he is who don't know him.
So Daniel Smith is the premier from Alberta. So this is where she's talking independence. Is she good or bad? I'm not getting into that. I have reasons to have a foot in both camps. Time will tell. But let's go back to Greenland. We've got the Northwest Passage. I should have done some more homework on that. We've got the Northwest Passage in Canada, and it comes down, it can go into Hudson's Bay, and it can go all the way over by Alaska. So the ice caps are melting in the Arctic. So what I'm looking at is Danielle Smith said she wants a rail line that comes down from Hudson's Bay down south to pick up with the other lines to be able to transport whatever products they have or whatever they're bringing in. She mentioned this a year or two ago. I never understood the significance, but now that all of this is coming out with the 51st state, and I'm watching Greenland. Greenland is almost the mouth. It's not quite the mouth. I think there's only 27 miles between Canada and Greenland, or 24 miles. It's basically the mouth of the Northwest Passage. Who owns that is going to own the trade routes. This is all about economics. So my understanding of Greenland, you remember War Castles, Russell J. Gould, who was the other one? David Wynne Miller. He said Greenland has the most ice right now than any other country in the world.
I'm not. Sorry, you mean icebreakers? Icebreakers?
No, they have the most ice. And they say this ice, that there was a flying saucer. So too bad your friends couldn't have joined us, because this is interesting. They said there's a flying saucer, and as that ice starts to melt, they said planes have flown over it and they didn't crash, but they had to land because the systems all went down. They figured that device had energy in it before the last ice age. Part of the reason that I'm just entertaining a lot of things. What they're saying is that ice melts in Greenland. It has memory in it. Water has memory in our body. Why are they poisoning the water so bad? The fluoride, all the things they're doing to the water. What they're saying is that water can help us remember. Is that going to help because it thaws and goes into the oceans? I don't know. I don't know. So my point is, there can be so many explanations. So then I'm looking at Greenland. They say there's 60,000 people in Greenland. Trump's going to give them each $100,000. That's probably more than they make in probably 5-10 years. Does it matter? I don't care. Then I look at where Iceland is to Greenland. Russia and China will have to come through those tighter channels. And then when I look at Iceland, lo and behold, who's next door? Ireland. So
yes,
it's all connected.
This is where Hyperborea comes from, the whole civilization about that. And Ireland had forts on its west coast when it was all free. It's Hyperborea, I think it's called. There might be
You
another.
know certain things, Miles, and I like talking to you because there's things that I learned from you.
This is going back to the ancient times, from the Tuatha De Danann and Hyperboreans and stuff. There was a civilization due northwest of Ireland.
So northwest would be where Iceland is.
Yes, exactly.
Right. So
that's before the world tilted by about the crust tilted by about 25-30 degrees or so, which is when Antarctica slid down to the south, and that's when it froze. That's how the Germans were able to get to Antarctica during the 20th century or the 1920s, because they had the maps of Antarctica before it froze. That's the basic narrative that we're talking about.
Right. And it's great to entertain all of these narratives, because none of us are going to know until we start seeing more information coming out. Yeah. And so we talked about Canada. We talk about the water. They had an architect. So what's happening is they're bringing all the corporations in, the NGOs. NGOs don't answer to the politicians. Everybody's messed up about what politician is doing this, what politician is doing that. It's the NGOs, or
yes.
it's countries like China. So this is beyond. So everybody's sitting here going, I like this politician. I like this politician. They're window dressing. The NGOs do not answer. I've gone through and looked at the European
this is
Union.
What the former Prime Minister Liz Truss is doing. She's got her own channel now. She was taken out by a coup d'etat. She didn't know what on earth she was dealing with, but now she's found it doesn't matter who you vote in, and this is what she's saying. It doesn't matter who you vote in. It's a civil service which does everything. And according to Michael Shrimpton's book, which is now in its 3rd edition, the civil service is controlled by this ultra-secret Germanic secret intelligence. They're everywhere.
So that would be interesting.
With this goes back to the 1800s, 1700s and all that.
Is there another word for that? Germanic intelligence? Like, you got the OSS, we've got different things.
Yeah. Well, it's the same. It's different initials, but that's the other thing that Lucy Wyatt was writing about, and she is talking about the Doom cult, which was expelled from Rome and went to Venice, and were otherwise became known as the Venetians, and they effectively took control of all the relevant royal families and governing bodies that way. So this is embedded with a really dark cult from the past, otherwise known as the Doom cult.
So when I was talking about this man that I was clearing his energy, and I said, look in the future. So his anger, I'm looking, and he gave me permission to go in and look at him. And I'm looking, I'm going, where's your anger? And it's in the future. And this is if I could say anything to the secret space program. Don't just look at what you remember in these fragments coming back. Consider that, of course. Ask what you're feeling. Is it in the past? Is it in the present? Is it in the future? And the people who I would call are more they're in the physical reality. They might have a spiritual component. So I consider myself as having a spiritual component. Sorry about that. But I also live in a physical reality. So So I can be as spiritual as I want to be, but maybe the energies have not picked up yet to allow that to materialize. So like I've said this to you before, there's times when I was getting really high figuring this stuff out. When I say high, I mean high on information. I'd be at the top of the stairs and I think I can fly today. And obviously I didn't, I walked down the stairs because I thought if they call an ambulance and I break my leg and they say, what were you doing? Thought I could fly. I'd be in a nut house in no time, right? But so what has happened is I think the dimensions that we are experiencing right now that are coming on is creating a vacuum because we know something is wrong. There's something in the energies that we know something doesn't make sense. More people are asking. We still have even the lower vibrational people who, if you don't agree with me, you're not my friend. Have it your way. We're still dealing with some of that.
Well, there's a lot about that, about Generation Z. They are becoming more and more isolated because they're not able to communicate with anybody outside their immediate sphere of reality, which is basically, this meta reality.
So we're going to come into meta in a minute. I might get you to remind me about that. So I look at people who are awakening, and what I'm finding right now, the empaths, the ones who are more compassionate, understanding, willing to give people the benefit of the doubt. David Wilcox did some damage, and I'm not judging him. Oh, be 51% to others. Go fuck yourself. The empaths are already more than 51% concerned about others. Why don't you grow up and own your shit? Should have been what his message is.
No,
And the empaths are getting to that point.
He's got
now.
his way of doing things. The poor man. I mean, he's had to deal with Corey Good and things. I mean, he's traumatized.
So I'm not putting him down. He did. So he came before us. He brought so much information to light. But what my point is, the empaths are coming out now going, wait a minute. You need a black sheep because you don't want to change. It doesn't matter if it's a government employee, a corporate employee, a family member in academia. It doesn't matter. They got to put other people down to esteem themselves. So David Wilcock took a heck of a chance by coming out when he did, because a lot of the stuff that he said is not verifiable. We have people talking about it. We don't know if that's MK Ultra.
This is the whole point about a lot of this stuff. It's not verifiable, and we've got to never believe it, but just hear it.
So when you talk about so empaths right now, I'm not saying I'm having trouble connecting to them. We do it etherically. Like I'll be talking to somebody and saying, oh, so-and-so's doing really well. Things are happening. Next thing you know, I get a text from her. That's happened twice in the last 3 days. And they're like, how you doing? So they know that we're thinking. So that the people on the earth plane need to start bringing up their psychic abilities, but doing it with people that they already know. Not are trustworthy, because you don't know who's going to change their mind, but people that you already you've been through experiences, you're on the same page. And it doesn't mean you're always going to stay with that. Let's go back to what you call the generation, what'd you call them?
Z, I think it's, yeah.
Z. Okay, so maybe so when I talk to people and they say, I got a problem with...
It's Z, so it's called, I don't know what it's called.
Because it's American, right? But it's the same. But anyways, but when I'm working with people, they'll say, I got problems at work. I got problems with my family. I got problems with my husband. I got problems with the dog. I shouldn't say that was a bad example. I turn around and I say to them sometimes, are you sure you're not just surrounded by assholes? That maybe that was the energy that you knew as a child. And because you were treated like the black sheep as a child, so you learned you had to people please. It's in my book, people pleasing. Always trying to make other people feel good so they like you.
That's a very good point, people pleasing.
People pleasing. So my point is the Generation Xers, nobody gets a pass with me. If you're a good, decent person, fine. If you can't handle other people's communication, that's fine. They're also blaming the baby boomers. Don't go getting any ideas, but technically I'm a baby boomer.
Well, I'm a baby boomer.
We're voting in the liberals. What the hell? You can't have an honest conversation with me about what's going on, and you need to have a preconceived notion fulfilled so that you can esteem yourself. You got the wrong girl. So this is what people don't understand, that energetically we can change the consciousness by saying yes, but no. And the Gen Zs, it does not mean they get a pass. I know some younger people who would probably, I don't know what the ages are, that I can relate to very well. Do we agree on everything? Do I believe they need to be on these things 24/7? No. But you can put shungite, you can do all kinds of things to protect yourself from some of these devices. Learn how to clear your energy. Learn how to reconnect. And the one thing that's happening right now, as I said, I'm talking to some of my friends and they're like, I just don't feel like going out right now. I just want to be left alone. Are they getting downloads? Some of them are sleeping a lot now. I slept a lot last year. Sometimes I thought I
Well,
missed
there's
a
a
day.
lot of solar flares disrupting people's sleep and things.
So that you take into consideration as well. Are the solar flares creating downloads? And if we go back to Greenland, what they're saying about this water that the ice that's melting, it has memory in it before the ice age happened when that saucer crashed. So if you look up David Wynn, I think his name is David Wynn, Wynn Miller. I think he's deceased now. And he does a whole presentation on Greenland. That
Well,
could be why they
there's a
want
whole
Greenland.
thing called blue ice, which they tried investigating. It's a blue ice, and that seemed to have a different properties. And it's in
Where
the
is that? Where is
Antarctic.
that?
It's in the Antarctic and other places. It's a blue ice, and
So
it
we
seems to
don't
have
know.
they put equipment into it and hollowed it out and put equipment into it, and it regrew so quickly that they had to get out and leave the equipment inside. Seems to have some kind of coherence. It's not normal ice.
So I don't focus a lot on Antarctica. I understand Bird went down there. I understand there's some subterranean caverns down there. Again, listening to a lot of the truther movement in that area, they tell you about it. They might have an emotional response to it. Was it actual what happened? Or is it something that they had programmed into their minds? So when I go back to talking about the 20 and back, they're referencing it in years, which is our physical 3D reality, which we know the calendar is wrong. So
Yeah.
it used to be 13 months of 28 days. They've messed up the whole calendar. How many years has it been since our last ice age? So we don't know when all this was changed. Is this a construct that they give us to think about? And
Yeah.
I'm not doubting anybody you're listening to or anybody that you're having
Well,
come out. It takes a lot of courage to speak
all
out.
I'll say is that there's an awful lot of structures on the planet which are relatively recent, and then there's the whole Tartarian thing, which was expunged. And there was a flag for our Tartaria. There was a queen for Tartaria who was shot by the Russians in World War II. So there are real artifacts of that highly developed use of electrical power completely differently than we are misusing it now. So that goes back to about 160 years ago, in the middle of the 1800s.
So
And all that was taken away roughly in the middle 1800s. Now and then they got rid of 3.5 billion people, and all the factories were manned by these kids in their early teens. And so they took away an entire generation which couldn't talk to their children and tell them what had happened. And that's what's happening now with Generation Z or Z. They're not getting the wisdom of their grandparents.
no. And that's intentional. So people are saying, corporations are saying, oh, join our family. You're not my family. You might be a company I work for. So then you distance yourself. Right. So they're redefining what the definitions are. And that's what we have to pay attention to. So I'm going to come back to what we talked about the secret space program. So it doesn't matter what part of the spectrum of consciousness you're on. If you're more of the 3D and you understand you're in the physical reality, you're a spirit having a physical experience, or whether you have advanced so far in the spiritual, in the consciousness evolution with the secret space programs and all of this, but you need to know how to come back and ground and see how this works on the 3D without getting conned into becoming part of the matrix. The idea is that you can walk through the layers of consciousness, and I use this one a lot, Miles, but this is David Hawkins' cone of consciousness. People say, oh, you want to be enlightenment. Why? You want to be able to go through the whole range of frequencies. Now, this is only goes to 1,000. I know parasites are at 1,100. If you're clearing them out, there's all kinds of other ones. You want to be able to go through the range. So I'll give an example. Somebody in the secret space program might say, nobody will understand what I'm saying. So they don't want to come down here and deal with anger, fear. They're going to just go into denial maybe because they don't want people to think they're crazy. The idea is all of us learn how to feel what's going on in our body, read our own energy. Is this mine or somebody else's? What am I missing? I'll be honest with you, Miles. Not that I'm not honest with you. I spent so much time trying to get my head around the 3D nonsense that's going on. I let some of my spiritual aspirations go because you can only sometimes, you can't flip and flop back and forth all the time. You can do it a couple times, but I had to go and see what's wrong in the 3D world. And you know what I'm realizing? People are waking up and starting to say things that I've said 2 years ago, and it's not a contest. But there's still other people who are saying, well, you're not from this town, so you don't have an opinion. And it's like, we're all human. And I got to watch saying that to you because some people might say, no, we're not. So my point is, it's all about inner awareness and understanding what is happening. So Greenland. So am I right about what I said about Greenland? I'm not, you and I aren't in competition or anything like that. But I'm saying, show me the truth in a way I can handle it. Is this about trade routes and economics, same as the China, whatever, and the Boston Tea Party? Are we still in the same game?
Well, if I used to fly, I flew in and out of Oslo Airport for 17 years, and they've expanded it enormously. I think it's got like 10 runways or something now. But when you look at where Oslo is, the proximity to Iceland, Iceland Air, Alaska Airlines, China.
What is Oslo, Norway?
Yeah, it's Oslo. When you go up to that, because we're so used to this huge top of the North American and the Russian China continent, this massive, huge, expanded, inverted triangle. They're actually all very close together up there.
Yes.
And it's just nipping over to Peking or nipping over to Tokyo. Ain't that much of a distance, but we're all thought, well, you've got to travel the whole of North America and all this huge distance. No.
And a lot of people are questioning this now, and they're questioning, how can an airplane that travels for 17 hours across an ocean only have fuel in the wings and get you where you need to go? So this is great that people are questioning.
Well, no, there's a whole lot of misinformation about that because people don't understand how the jet streams work and how when you're cruising,
so when
you're in the cruise with a rarefied atmosphere, that's why planes, they use a hell of a lot more fuel at lower level because the air, they're at 34, 40,000 feet. All you got to do is just keep yourself moving slightly.
So this is interesting because I was watching Field McConnell recently, and somebody asked him that question, and he was a pilot for Air Force. I don't recall how many years or whatever.
Yeah, he left Lufthansa as soon as they found they put this remote piloting guidance system in.
So he knew that they were crashing the planes.
Yes, he knew that, and that's why he left. He says, "I'm not responsible for the flight of this. I cannot take as captain. I cannot say I'm responsible for this airplane, but somebody else can take it over."
And I'm sure he got targeted for that.
He did,
right?
And he had a handler from Northern Ireland, a very nice lady who dropped off.
Not Denise.
Yeah, I think
his wife.
Yeah.
I entertained that thought because I thought in the beginning, especially when he came out to that AV8 conference, and he's telling everybody how much he loves his wife and they're getting married and they're having ceremony. I think was in wherever that conference was. And I watched her for the longest time. And I don't get the impression, because if she was the handler, she wouldn't have been killed. She died of breast cancer. So let's talk about psychopathy and evil. She died of breast cancer. My understanding is Rick DeSantis' wife, the governor of Florida, his wife got breast cancer. What do your breasts do? When they nurture offspring, they're aesthetic for some pleasure, but they protect your heart. Do you ever notice nurses? Okay, I'm not. Don't.
This is important. Of course, it's important.
So nurses, they tend to be barrel chested or big up front, and this is part of the energy field that people don't know how to protect because they're doing one of this with sick people. So I'm not saying all nurses are that body type, but quite often they are. So they
explain that thing about barrel chested and what are the differences in body types which verify.
So I'm not going into to the body types. I just looked this up, so I know I've got it here. So what I'm saying is it's about protecting your energy, and this is what gives us a great ability right now to learn how to protect our energy with everything that is changing, but we have to understand it and change our thinking. If we have preconceived notions, we're not going to get through that. Some people might think I'm picking on women who've got a big, like they're apple shaped. No, I'm saying that they're protecting their energy. So you can see this is an energetic form. You can see the chakras front and back. You can see all the layers of the aura. Sorry, I have writing on these two squares, but you can see all the layers of the aura. What happens with people, if they're afraid, it doesn't matter what occupation you're in or what your circumstances in. Often you put all your energy in the front because you want to protect yourself, because we don't have eyes on the back of their head. What that does is opens up the energy. So basically this person here would be shifting all the energy over here, but the aura would be less solid in the back. That's where the demonics and the dark energies and the self-doubt and all of those negative emotions come in. That's where the evil comes in. When you see people talk about something they don't like, sometimes you see them going like this. Sometimes that's because they're being targeted with other energies that are trying to get in. I'm not saying it's this way all the time. I'm not implying that. But what I'm finding is people who do a lot of work dealing with serious illness, which I think a lot of it's been misdiagnosed. Who cares? That's just an opinion.
I think a great deal of it's been misdiagnosed.
Right? So we know
Deliberately.
that. But my point is, if you work in a cancer ward and you work in there for 20 years, do you think at some point you're not concerned you might get something if somebody coughs on you? I'm not saying that's how it works. I'm not implying that. I'm implying is what are our defensive mechanisms? What do we put in play? And the point I'm really trying to make today, Miles, it doesn't matter if you were in the secret space program, if you think you were. If you know who Theo Fleury is, he's a Canadian hockey player. And he had some bad things happen to him as a child, but he went down to Roswell and was living down. Where's Roswell? Is that Arizona or is that Texas? I can't remember.
Roswell, New Mexico, I think. I could be completely wrong there.
But he said he's outside and he's watching craft fly back and forth. He's not a guy who tends to bullshit. So if he says he saw that, then I would assume that he saw that. But he's looking in the sky, unless he's done something, some kind of a psychedelic. Like you can have wine, you can smoke a joint or whatever. You go outside. My point is you can go outside. You don't all of a sudden start seeing spacecraft. So my point is, I believe a lot of these people's experiences, the idea is there's always somebody saying, oh no, that didn't happen. I know two people who went down to the trucker rally and they stayed for a weekend. And I only went down one day for, I think 4 or 5 hours. That wasn't my thing. And don't get me wrong, it's still good it happened, but it wasn't my thing. Anyways, when they got home, they lived in 2 different cities. When they got home, she's telling me, she goes, I'm sicker than a dog. She goes, I'm so mad at my friends that I went down there in the freezing cold for 5 days, took trays of coffee for the truckers, bought them food from whatever restaurant, made sure they all ate. Like she just dropped coin on the truckers. She goes, my friends didn't go, but she goes, but I'm the one who's sick. Well, then that can create resentment for the people who didn't go. And this is where we need to decouple the codependence and worrying about everybody else. The other friend was, he lives on the other side of Toronto. He said when he coughed, it tasted like he was coughing up burnt taste. And then when you see
what sort of taste?
Sorry?
What sort of taste?
He said burnt? It was burnt. So he would cough and it would come up tasting burnt. So I'm not saying it was like a marinade burnt or something off the barbecue burnt. He just said it was burnt. But what was interesting, when you started looking directly across from the main Parliament building, they had cops on the other side of the street where I'm not saying it was right, where the Terry Fox Memorial was, but they had these great big squares, like 2 by 2 foot metal squares.
Yes, they would have been some kind of non-lethal weapon transmitters, no?
Direct energy, frequency disruptor, whatever, right? So my point is, because she told me that she was upset, I did not discount her experience.
They would be phased array, highly focusable antenna systems.
Right. And maybe
whatever frequency or range they were using.
So my point is, if they're going to go and kill all the ostriches in Canada the way they did, there's like 300 some odd ostriches, and they used 1,000 rounds is what they did to kill these ostriches in a kill pen. So you watch the first one go down, and then next thing you know, you're running around because you realize you're in a slaughter pen. That was disgusting. There is people who will do this. I don't care if it's the UK. I don't care if it's Canada. I don't care if it's the US. I don't care if it's Australia. I don't care if it's the Middle East. I don't care. There's people who will get off on causing pain and suffering
Yes.
to another living being, whatever it is, animal, person.
They would have been
I did not.
absolutely horrendously. That's a mass massacre. That's the
So
Gaza.
what? It's
Maybe
awful what they're doing, but they're making it so they're masking them up. I get why ICE is being masked, and I don't care what anybody says, because with all this COVID stuff, wear a mask, wear a mask, wear a mask. But we want to see who you are so we can threaten you and your loved ones. So you shouldn't wear a mask now that you're doing the right thing. This is the sociopathy that we're dealing with in the West. A lot of these people are white women. So they're saying, oh, look at the boomer white women. I'm like, like I qualify barely as that age group. But my point is, I don't think like most white women. I think the feminist movement has created a lack of love and harmony in women's life. I think they did that when they brought the women need to go to work. When was that? The 1800s. They took the men off the farms and put them in the factories. And then the kids went to school. The women had nothing to do. Next thing you know, they're working. They did that so they could tax another income. We need to change a lot of things. Okay, so we weren't going to talk about Trump. Trump is giving every child who's born this year.
no. There's nothing we don't talk
$1,000.
about. We talk about anything. Go ahead.
Okay, so I look at this and I think, does this make sense? Because we know what we're doing doesn't make sense from an economic and a financial position. We used to have ratios that we had to go by before as financial planners. If somebody was looking to buy a house, it was 2.5 times your gross salary. So I had a couple I was working with, they were making maybe $120, maybe $130 between them. So that means they would have been able to afford at max a $300,000 mortgage, depending if they had car payments. The bank approves them for $500,000. Well, I look like an idiot because they want this big house. So they've thrown absolutely everything out the window. So our financial models were designed to cripple us for a very long time.
Yes, and they want rid of the middle class.
What's that?
They want rid of the middle classes.
They totally want rid of the middle class. So let's go back to Trump.
Because their function can be done by these robots.
So I don't quite know all of whether that's happening or not. So we have the transhumanist thing, but let's go back to what I want to say about Trump. So he's giving every child that's born in America $1,000 that gets put in a trust fund for them until they turn 18. And he said, if it gives them $175,000, he goes, nobody can access it. The parents oversee it, but nobody can access it. And he said, but when the child turns 18, that money goes to the child. And maybe they've got 175,000. Maybe they get a business going. Maybe they have an entrepreneurial spirit. Maybe they want to go to school, which I can't imagine, post-secondary. Maybe they want to start a family or buy a house, but it gives them a start. So this is what Gaddafi was doing in Libya. Anybody who got married, he either bought him a house or gave him 50,000 for a house. Education was free. Look what they did to him. So the other thing Trump is doing is he's saying for the middle class, he wants to give them all a rebate check, a dividend check for all the minerals and all of the tariffs that are coming up, like that he's bringing back to the U.S. He wants to give the middle class all $2,000. Why do we think the far left is losing it? They don't want these people to get a foot up. They want them to be crushed so they can sit there and scoop the properties and scoop whatever they want. So we're in a battle of good and evil. It does not matter who's good, who's evil, who's neutral and really stupid in the middle. Maybe it's not their time yet. I'm not the first person to wake up. Doesn't mean I was dumb back then. It just means it wasn't my time. And I use the David Wilcox example. He was ahead of his time. They set him up more times than not. He made more mistakes because he was ahead of the curve. There's people like you. There's a lot of people out here, myself. We're still ahead of the curve. We still get set up. And guess that's just the nature of evil. But you organize yourself the best way you can. Ask the questions. The question isn't about being smarter and strengthening that left brain function, that masculine intellectual mind that can be programmed. It's about balancing the two hemispheres of your brain, bringing in your creative side. If we lived in a world that was decent and gave everybody a fighting chance, what would it look like? The whole birthing process would be gone. The education system would be gone. The education system, bell goes off, you go to class. Bell goes off, you go to research or recess. Bell comes on again, you go back into class. Bell comes on, you go for lunch. That's a prison model. So notice all these kids, years ago, they started wearing backpacks and putting all of their books in their backpacks. That kind of looks like a grunt in the military, doesn't it? Might be a barbecue pack, but they're training them. They're programming them for whatever jobs that, I don't call them the elites because there's nothing elite about them, but whatever the grand scheme is. So let's go back to
Well,
Trump, and you're saying
this
he's
is one of
taken
the
over North
things.
America.
This is one of the things. The key things about the public, they're seeing what the elite is made of. With
Some
this
are and
Epstein.
some aren't.
Yeah.
And some of them get a gain because maybe they're employed. 40% of Canadians work for government. I can't remember if it's just federal government or all levels of government. Who do you think votes in the carnies? So they brought in immigration back in 2015. There was already a high number of Indians in Brampton. This is before the vid and all this hit. And I was talking to somebody online and I said, why would you vote Liberal? And he said, why wouldn't we? They give us everything. We all vote Liberal. So this is somebody who's come in from India who says they give us everything. Do you think they're going to care whether you get ripped off as long as they get ahead? Have you heard about the corruption that has been unearthed in Toronto? They've arrested 7 officers, which we're all laughing, thinking we're pretty sure it's a little more than that.
No.
Have you heard about that?
No.
So what has happened is they were supporting Indian gangs. I don't know if they're supporting other gangs, and I'm not.
Are you suggesting it's like in London where the rape gangs were being supported by certain officials?
But that destroys your ability to love because your body will train on that. So every time you are making love with your partner, the one you love, you might flash back to that until you learn how to clear it. This is evil. These are white people in Congress doing it. Do you remember John Wedger? He talked about child sex abuse and the trafficking and the police covering it up for how long? Look what they put him through. Right? So it's not that people haven't spoken up. And you've got a lot of females like this Cressida Dick. What am I clearing? This Cressida Dick was the commissioner for, I don't know if it was all the UK, but definitely London, that she was the police commissioner. Field McConnell named her and female sex offenders in high places who run the pedophile rings. Like, we got to get past this, that it's just the men doing it.
But
men
they see, people have got to understand that the police and the armed services are not there to defend your country or to defend you. They are to maintain the peace, and they're under the control of the powers that be. So
this is why I think this has come out in Toronto. Toronto is corrupt on so many levels. We'd be here for another hour to talk about that. But what is happening is opening the gateway. So the chief of police comes out. So they have the 3 officers who are saying we've arrested 7 officers for money laundering, drug trafficking. They were trying to, they wanted to murder corrections, not an officer, but he was in charge of the corrections because he was doing his job. So they put a hit on their own person. They went in and found the personal information of police services agents and gave them to the gang so they would know where to go to kill their own people. If anybody thinks this doesn't happen in our world, so I'm going to call us the normies.
Yeah, but this is as old as the hills. I think this goes back to the 60s or whatever, you know.
Totally. But my point is, it's gone on for so long. The reason I think this has come out is because now basically you're an idiot if you're not waking up and asking questions.
Well, there is that point. If you haven't noticed something by now, you're never going to notice.
You're never going to. So, as I've said before, get a job, get off the planet, and come back smarter, right? So I struggle with some of the crap that they tell us about what's wrong with Canada. And one of them is Justin Trudeau's, when he had the blackface on, he's got his tongue out, and he's got a turban on. And everybody's going, racist, racist, racist. Racist, racist, you're racist. I've had white women tell me out in Wilmot, we are so racist. And I'm like, who mated with this thing? What's your offspring like? Like, she was just so adamant that we're evil. This is the mentality of the women who were coming out in these protests. We want to stick up for all these illegal immigrants who are committing whatever crimes. Doesn't matter if they're committing crime or not. You're here illegally, go home. So my point is, we don't understand. Let's go back to Trudeau. So do you know who this is? This is the book called Occult Conspiracy.
Yes, it's Aleister Crowley.
So you know what this is?
And he's painted up black. Yeah.
So why is he painted black? That's black magic. He's a black magician.
And there's another book Trudeau, I was asked to get. This is it here. You see that?
Okay. So my point is, we're told we're all racist. When it's black magic, they don't want us to see. And you and I have done so many videos by now. I showed you about the Fibonacci sequence around the Great Lakes, the five
Yeah, the
cities in
Fibonacci
Ontario where
sequence
they're
is
bringing in
crucial.
immigration
That's
to lower
crucial
the
in
frequency.
magic. But bearing in mind,
So,
magic is just simply a form of hidden knowledge.
right. So when you come around Sudbury, Sault Ste. Marie, North Bay, Timmins, Thunder Bay, and the map I used didn't show Minneapolis. It showed parts of Minnesota. So I put Duluth in there, came out at Chicago, Detroit, and up the 401 series highways. And what you said earlier about the roads used to be efficient, they know where the earth energies are. Now they know where to pave them with asphalt and have trucks thundering over them to mess with Mother Earth.
Yes.
Going back to Greenland, when all of this water, if it starts to thaw and starts coming out and it has memory in it, is Mother Earth going to remember who she is, and we're all going to ascend at the same time? What I want to go back and say with Minneapolis. So I'm watching the dark energies for no other reason than sometimes I need a hobby, but I'm watching the dark energies. So when I come to Duluth and I find out about Minneapolis, beside Minneapolis, guess what the capital is? St. Paul. St. Paul, the governor of Minnesota, was just awarded a plaque from the Satan worshipers of Minnesota. So much is done energetically. So this is interesting that you're saying that, because I didn't make the connection to St. Paul, but these guys are getting desperate. That's what's beautiful that is happening. And we kind of go by the border between Canada and the US. I don't think energetically, when the Great Lakes are part of both countries, I think it's just a water mass that's been manipulated. And in Detroit, they had a museum of cultural arts, and they have a painting in there called The Nightmare. And they show a woman in a nightie, and she's sprawled across the bed, like she's covered, but they have this demonic sitting on her stomach. The demonic is either incubus or succubus. And Sigmund Freud had it in his house for a number of years. So I don't know if it was sold upon his estate and then it went to this museum. I don't know how it works, but it was painted, I think, in the 1700s. When you follow that Fibonacci sequence, you and I've discussed this before, and if you want to do a video on this, I would be more than happy to give you everything.
This is the whole thing about Victor Schauberger, his vortex dynamics and all that.
Oh, okay. So hang on to that. So what happens around the Fibonacci sequence, it goes all the way up to 401, and then it goes to the government buildings in Ottawa on Wellington Street. So the one right across from the Prime Minister's office, it has those demonics. They're called grotesques. And the ones holding a basket with eggs, which represents the children, they've got the reptiles coming down the clock tower. I've got all the pictures on this. So my point is, so now they're getting desperate. So now they're charging St. Paul with something else. So you just added information. I didn't know that about John Hopkins doing a study.
It was called a lockstep report. Anyway, it was banned. The person that read it out, it was low quality interview, but it's John Hopkins Institute. The university.
So I don't know if I agree with everything in John Hopkins either.
Well, no, I wouldn't, because I think it's part of something which is very sinister. That's my personal opinion, for entertainment purposes only.
Right. So my point is, there could be good people there. There's good people everywhere. There's bad people everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
You don't get a pass because of what you do for an occupation. You get a pass of whether your heart is genuine, you know right or wrong, you have healthy boundaries, you don't push yourself on others, but you have to hold the other side of that boundary and don't let others push themselves on you. I have learned not defensive techniques, but verbally, if somebody starts some nonsense with me, I just sit there and watch, and I think, how can I throw this person off their game, especially if they're talking nonsense, come out with something totally outrageous, but they don't want to talk about it. And I'm like, glad we got that sorted out. Like, I don't buy into, so going back to Aleister Crowley, black magic, racism. You're just racist. You know, I was called a misogynist once, which means you're against women. And I'm like, what did they do to you people in school? This was a younger person too. Like, what did they do to you? You don't even have common sense anymore. So what I think is happening, I think Trump is really pushing the buttons in Canada. I don't think anybody's got what it takes to stand up. When you look at Greenland, was it Germany sent 15 soldiers over there? Now they all want to stop Trump from getting
Excuse
Greenland.
me. Hold on here. I would tell you to hold on. Great Britain, the United Kingdom, sent one soldier in there.
So is some of this theater? I
I
don't
think he was
know. So
holding
they show
10 pegs or
pictures.
something.
So some things are funny, right? So they show pictures of tanks in Canada who are going to take on the U.S. And they show the tanks, but they show tampons that they're shooting. like some of it's funny. Like you got to sit there. And then what
Actually,
else was
I
another
think
one? They said,
there was some there was mention of experiments or tests done to the Greenlanders to actually reduce their population, so they wouldn't have babies. That's worth
they
looking
do
up.
that with every indigenous population.
Yeah.
A lot of work is coming out again about the blood types and the O negatives or O positives. There's confusion about the donor, who's the universal donor, who's the universal recipient. But what First Nations has the highest population, including Basque in Spain, including North American, including Greenland, and I think they did it in either Norway or what's Brussels? What's Brussels? What state or country is that?
Sweden,
Sweden.
Denmark.
So they did it in, sorry, I just don't know. You know some of that better than I do. But they did it to the First Nations because they do not, they're the ones connected more to the land. Great way to bring in transhumanism, right? So there's a lot of things you and I've covered today. If I can, recap with anything, Miles, I think it's really important that people start asking themselves, show me yes, show me no. Do I have the right to go in and ask these questions? Don't go into somebody's field without their permission. That is an energetic faux pas. You don't know what they're going to send back to you as a, like maybe you think they're really nice and they're not, and they can send you there. I've had people send me psychic attack and I'm thinking, I was nice to you, but this person was not impressed because I didn't buy into the nonsense. Like what, they were always nice at first and they start grooming you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you got the wrong girl. This is a female, like nothing weird. But then next thing you know, I'm getting psychic attack because she's mad. So people don't understand the energies are changing. We've got a vacuum right now. I think we have five planets. What am I on? February. So February 1st, we had a full moon. There's 5 planets that are in Saturn right now. Saturn's the government. Saturn's institutions. Normally so when you get a new moon, you're starting to create things. When you get a full moon, it's starting to recede and go down in size. Is that what we're going to see in the next 2 weeks? Nobody knows. But be true to yourself. Start asking yourself the questions. If you're really good at energy and you've been feeling kind of beat up, regroup. Let the noise go as much as you can. Regroup. What do you need? Now that the energy is creating a vacuum and changing, do you need to set a new auric bubble around you? Do you need to try it a different way? And I'm saying this to the secret space people. How do we know that if they haven't, let's say they hypnotize them, they hypnotize a lot of people. I'm not just picking on them. How do we know they're not going to put them in play against the masses? Like these
Well,
guys
I
are
think that
psychopaths in
was what
charge.
James Casbolt, remember years ago, explained that one of the things that they're being trained for are to pacify the the population,
Say that
so
again, to
that when
what?
things they're they were being trained as a sort of super soldiers was to pacify
Pacify.
the population. That was what they
And
were
they've
being
done a
trained
good
for.
job at
But
it.
I mean, we're going back to something you were saying way back in 2013. That's a long time ago.
So it doesn't mean, so what I'm learning, Miles, I'm learning that things that I knew back when, now I'm going back and not learning it because I already know it, but I'm re-educating myself. Did I not have the full picture there? Is there more information I have now that can show me a different possibility or probability? So I'm really starting to go back. So I love Max Spear's videos. I go back and you had a lot of videos with him, and some of your videos I watched the whole, some I just watched the clips. I'm sure
Well,
you've got
a
all
lot of
those on
people are
file.
beginning to watch the Michael Aquino 4 hours. I got a phone call from somebody in Florida this afternoon. Although the mention of those 4 shows, recordings I did with Michael Aquino, was done on a private Zoom link that nobody else was able to see. Yet somebody from
Did you not post it on your channel, a basis? What basis is Michael Aquino?
I haven't a clue. I don't know.
I've got it. I've got a lot of your your
Yeah,
videos.
but the thing is that we were talking about this on a Zoom link, which means somebody plugged into the Zoom link. And actually, last night I got cramp. I had to get up, and I was being targeted at the last minute. That's with Project Veritas, and we hadn't. Well, the last time we talked with the guy running it, which
You
his
mean
name.
James O'Keefe?
No, we're talking about the original guy. Sounds European, but he's yeah, Project Veritas. Yeah.
Well, he's OMG now, so he's not, I think he's OMG now, but I thought that's what he called himself at first.
Uh,
But you know what? I think a lot of this is going to start happening. They're in their last ditch efforts to gain control. And this is where our consciousness, we can bring it back up again and say, okay, let's regroup. This is
yeah,
what I think is happening on the planet.
yeah,
You have the
Project
bottom
yeah
three.
Veritas. That was the interview with Veritas.
Okay, I don't know.
This is the original guys.
So I watch a lot of people.
And that's
I
with
don't,
Mel Hostalerich. I've never known his second name. We just knew each other on first name terms.
So I am not familiar with that, and I'm not going to apologize, but I don't have what's going on in the UK or in Europe down as much as I try in my area, southwestern Ontario. I still watch Eastern Ontario because they aren't going to have the restrictions or the mandates on them. So any of the politicians that are in Ottawa, they can go straight up to cottage country. No restrictions, where anybody from southwestern Ontario, if they keep these roadblocks that they're building within the cities, and you know, like on the highways, they put those.
Huge protest in London about that. Open our streets, open our streets, open our streets, because
Right.
they're all boxed in. Taxis,
So that's the
emergency
idea.
services have only one way in and one way out, so it can take you like half an hour to wind you round the. But these
So
are
that's what
villages.
they're doing here too.
And
So
in
one
Northern
road
Ireland, Sinn Féin, that well-known German-backed, German intelligence-backed, very well-organized political party in Ireland, they're talking about sanctuary cities.
Well, that's what they're doing everywhere. So
Yeah.
they're doing.
I mean, have you heard
sanctuary
that
cities in
term?
Canada.
Have you heard that term, sanctuary cities?
Totally.
Yeah.
Because we're going to teach you that this is in your best interest to roll over, play dead, and it's going to be your sanctuary to own nothing and be happy. So it's all word salad.
Yes.
So you've got 15-minute cities coming in, and so this is where I think Carney got panicked at Davos when he said New World Order. And you look at the one guy on his right, he kind of turns and looks at him. He's the premier of Saskatchewan. You know, I don't know, but you can guess that on the plane ride home, Carney and him sat down and he got hammered a beautiful deal, whether it's a beautiful home for his mother, whatever it is. He got bribed because now he sits beside like they all sit together, but he just goes along with it. And it's like, you guys are all prostitutes. You just don't know it. This is what is happening.
Yeah, but
so,
I object to that. Prostitution is an honest profession.
not if you're forced into it.
Maybe that sarcasm's a wee bit too much. Yeah.
Do you know what? I'm watching everything that comes out to me is just information. So when I watch somebody be a good person and be genuinely upset about things, as long as they're not over the top and saying, you need to do this and you need to do this and you need to do this. No, taking the information, make the right choice, energetically change the frequencies around us, or figure out how to stop the interference. But there's a lot of people who come out and go, what's the big deal? So they were trafficked. And I've watched different media people turn on maybe a man who just said, what's the big deal? We got lost for this. His level of ignorance on the Epstein files was not acceptable. She came out and did a couple, I'm not sure if they were reels or YouTube videos on him. Sorry?
Which person are you talking about? This? Sorry, I
think his name was, I'm going to say Scott Jennings, but he was like, what's the big deal with the Epstein files? So they had sex. They're young women. And I sit there and I think I've done my share about bringing a lot of attention to what's going on with the sex ed and all that kind of stuff. All they're doing is relocating into Canada. They're bringing the Silicon Valley up here. They're bringing all the Epstein Island and all the Caribbean stuff up to Waterloo region. They're going to try to take our water. They are really trying to use this energetically. as a hub, in my opinion, to relocate. So when you talked about somebody, the Venetians, you talked about who else? There was another
Now,
group
those
that
are
you talked about.
Venetians, not Phoenicians.
But the point is, they have to relocate. So at what point did the Roman Catholics, or not the Roman Catholics, but the Roman, I don't know if you call it the Roman Empire, was up in Ireland, and then they relocate to Italy. Like they all relocate. So now they're relocating again. This is the same crap. It's just 2026. This is what I see. It's all about the economics. It's all about the trade routes. That's what I see happening. They're coming across the top of the Arctic because those are thawing out. Does that mean we're going to be able to see what's going on in the Arctic? Who knows?
The poles are just shifting. So the
I
ice will
get
just
that.
move somewhere else. The
But
amount
if
of
we
rain
don't,
that we're having here is day after day after day after torrential rain. Once that turns to snow, this place is going to be ice.
so that's the whole idea, because they don't want you driving cars, because they want you to be afraid of the roads. So where I live right here, normally they have salt that they put on the roads and they have sand. They're not doing either. So I have my snows on. I have to watch what roads I drive on. Because sometimes I don't go over 40 kilometers, and I'm like, I'm a pretty good driver. I understand, but the car will start doing this. And people say to me, they go, this snow, they're not cleaning parking lots. They're not cleaning business parking lots, sidewalks. They're not cleaning the mats. I always wonder why it's blue and red, because that makes purple, which is the color of royalty. We're going that another time. So my point is, it's not them, it's the people in charge. So they've come out in Waterloo and said, oh, the salt on the roads is not good for the groundwater. So they didn't put any salt out here, but now our aquifer's down halfway, like for the level it should be at. They just lie through their teeth.
Well,
It's
that's what's
all they
happening
do,
in
Les.
Iran. They're running out of water in Iran. That's one of the reasons. They're talking about moving the whole cities. There's no water. They've been overusing. They have not adopted any procedures to deal with. It's like everything else. You milk anything until there's nothing left.
So sometimes I collect things. I collect maps. I've got map of Earth, 1887. I've got another one. I've got a map of Jerusalem. I've got Alexandria, whether they're accurate or not. But I also have encyclopedias from 1987 that I can correlate. So, okay, you're going to help me with this. So Jerusalem, that's the Nile, correct? I don't know what waterway this is. So when you start looking at this, sorry, I haven't looked at it
Yes.
in a while. You've got Jerusalem here.
Yeah.
You've got Bethlehem.
Yeah.
Sarah, I don't even know what that is. But you notice all the cities are on the rivers.
Yes.
So are they moving the rivers so that they can move the cities? What is in those rivers besides water? Are they trying to keep that for themselves? Are they bringing in, so the quarries, are putting a lot of quarries in around here? And what happens with the quarries? They have aqueducts. I'm not saying they're aquifers, aqueducts or aquitars. I have to go back and look at this. It's been a while since I've
There's a
looked at
heck
it.
of a lot of water underneath the desert, but I don't know about
So,
Jerusalem. I don't know
so
about
they're
Israel.
not moving the people. So has the river moved? That's the other question. My point is, they're not moving people saying we're running out of water because it's good for the people. That's just not how it works. So we have on the second concession, they have all kinds of quarries. And where I go walking, I'm usually a pretty good sport about things, but not every day. But where I go walking, they started drilling another hole. So I'm looking at this, and then I look at the sign. It says you can walk here, Region of Waterloo, Ministry of Environment. Can't remember who else was in it. And then I look at the company that's got the drill truck that's there for a month as they're drilling another hole where they've already got 2 access points to water on these spring-fed lakes. This thing's here for a month. I go and I look up the company. They go and outsource it from Guelph. So that's another town that has nothing to do with that's Wellington County, where we're Waterloo. So they always go outside and outsource it. So it's never you putting the boots to your own people. You're always doing it to
Yes.
somebody
Yes.
else's.
Yes. Yeah.
So what had happened was, so I can't remember everything that happened, but then they had these fire hoses, looked like fire hoses, and they were running water from this well that they had dug, and they're running it into the spring-fed lake. Well, we kept asking, what are you guys doing? What are you doing? We don't know. We don't know. Just doing my job. This kind of ignorance, stupidity. So anyways, the one day I happened to park my car and the 2 guys are walking down to the lake, and I can tell the pipes have water in it, the hoses have water. And I watch them go in the bush and go down to the swamp area while I follow them. And there's a bladder that had to be like, I'm going to say 10 by, I don't know if it's 10 by 12, 12 by 15, like you get the size of it, but the hoses that are coming from the well aren't quite putting the water into the bladder. And you can see all the gray stuff going into the lake. I'm like, what are you guys doing?
In other words, there's something in these big tanks that you talk about.
So I don't know if it was the tanks then, but whether they're bringing the sludge in from the quarries, that they're bringing it in. So we don't have wildlife there. I've seen 2 turtles. I could see 10 turtles in one day on a log. I'm lucky if I saw 2 turtles last year. Kids won't fish there anymore. They say there's no big fish. The one kid gives me a fishing lesson, right? He goes, I go over to that other lake. He goes, I know where to fish. He goes, you fish in the grasses, or you like, because the big fish stay in the grasses. He goes, big fish eat little fish. He goes, but there's no big fish here. So the kids aren't even coming fishing anymore because of what happened. So I'm asking them, and I'm like, what are you doing? The young guy looks at me and turns away. The older guy, finally, I go, what the are you doing? And he goes, we have permission to be here. And I'm like, that's the other thing people do. They spout words. That's not what I asked you. I asked you what you're doing. And he goes, we got permission to be here. I go, what the are you doing? And he goes, don't worry about it. I go, there's gray stuff going in the water. What are you doing? He goes, we're going to clean it up. I go, what the, like, you know what I'm like, I can really get things cranked up.
You need to look at that to see whether those people are actually human or not.
So it's not the point. So my point is, finally, he goes, we have permission. I go, who gave you permission? And then they're blowing me off. The arrogance. And it doesn't matter if they're human or not. What are you going to do? Shoot one of them? So it doesn't matter. So my point is, I'm like, you guys need to grow a set of, you know what else? And I said, and maybe some brains wouldn't hurt. And I said, hope you guys got the, you know what? I go, you're going to be dead in 2 years. And I realized I might have been over the top. I continue on my walk. The girl who's in charge is Chinese. She stands there with a clipboard on the side of the trail. And so I had asked her a couple of times, what are you doing here? I don't know. I don't know. So this is what government workers are trained to do. I don't know. This is a yes or no question. Answer yes or no. That's I can go into a tirade and tell you what my concern is. But if you're in a council, like a Congress meeting, you get a yes or no answer. Like this is the control that we're dealing with, the censorship. So anyways, I come back and I thought I'm going to hit the road and see if there's a cruiser there, just so I know what I'm getting into when I come off the trail. Anyways, I can hear the 2 guys talking. So one's my age, maybe a little younger, and the other one's maybe in his 30s. I can hear them say to her, there she is there. So I walk, I didn't threaten anybody. I walk over and I said, do you see what they're doing? I go, you don't have a problem with this? She's from Ministry of the Environment. God knows where she lives. She's not going to have to deal with the fallout of this water. So anyways, I might have said a few more things. But then there's an article in the newspaper, the local newspaper, that said people in the city, maybe we have 100 and some odd thousand, I can't remember. But they said they're smelling sulfur. They're smelling raw sewage, rotten eggs. They're smelling all of these things from the water in their house. Do you know what the Ministry of Environment came out and said? Oh, there's a company in town that's using a new industrial cleaner. That's what the smell was. They ate it up hook, line, and sinker. I'm to the point, thin the herd. I really am. Oh, that's all it was? So they have gone and changed the water that comes in through our aqueducts, our aquifers, our aquatards. They've done it, and they did it. So I've done videos on this. So at one point, my friend and I had gone down. This is before we got into it with them. We'd gone down and we're taking pictures of these trucks, and they've got like the poison symbols on 5-gallon jugs. So we're taking pictures, never touched anything. We come back the next day. There's a great big steel fence. Like let's say it's by 30 by 30 around all of their stuff. And then they put industrial grade sodium bentonite in there. They had, I'm trying to think of all, I've got pictures of this still. They had all this stuff behind the scenes, but then they told us we couldn't walk there anymore. So they hide in plain sight. And as soon as you start asking questions, you got to go. They called the cop. It was a gong show is what it was. So these are the people who were in charge. But now we understand they're coming after the water here. The one aqueduct, I think it's an aquifer is down at half mast. Yeah. They want to bring in another 300,000 people in this region. Then you listen to the architects that come out about these rec centers and say, we might have to start showering together.
You might have to do what together?
shower to save water, and we might have to go to rec centers to shower. Does this sound like Auschwitz all over again?
Yes.
They don't like Miles. It is so you got to wait for some of this stuff to play out. That's why I don't get too worked up about it. I think we're in a phase where they haven't finished hanging themselves yet. And you know the saying, when you're in the kitchen and you're chopping something and you drop a knife, you don't go halfway down and scoop the knife. You got to let it hit the floor first before you pick it up.
Yeah.
I think we're in one of those scenarios with everything that's going on in Canada. I think Trump is trolling so many people. They're going for Cuba next. The Cubans, I'm sure they've got their paid people, but a lot of them are saying we're tired of this. The Venezuelans are happy that they're getting rid of the tyranny. Canada will be last, but there's no way Trump is going to let China come into Canada and bring in all these EV batteries that they've got to check and see all the products. Like I said, they're bringing in 5 towns. They call it Northern Ontario, but it's around Lake Superior, I think, is as high as it goes. And they're bringing in the immigrants because I think the immigrants don't understand what they're dealing with. They think they're getting a good paycheck, and they're just going to start replacing them as they die off. And when you look at all the minerals, that's one thing if you want your viewers to look at. Pull up a map of your own state, province, county, district. Like they have all kinds of different names they go by because then we can't compare one country's strategy to another. If you don't understand the terminology, go and look. We have so many minerals in Ontario. It is uncanny when you pull up the maps. Pull the map off, download a PFD, download it to a USB. So you've got it, because once they start seeing that we're starting to clue in and certain sites are getting hits, they turn around and change the pages on the sites. These guys are psychopaths. Yeah. Is it an algorithm doing it? Is it an AI doing it? Is it a robot doing it? What does it matter?
Well, if the robots are in charge, they're going to be wanting to maximize. This is where they're going to be for the data centers. You're going to have to cool. You're going to have to be rationed because the data center needs the electricity.
And it's interesting you're saying that. So overall, I see a lot of things that Trump is doing that makes sense. I'm not a fan of any one human being. He also wants to bring a number of data centers in where all the national parks are. Why would you want that frequency around the wildlife?
Well, they don't want any organic life. They
don't
want any organic life. And even Elon Musk saying about having them in space.
Right. So people are noticing here that in September, the leaves are starting to curl, but they're getting a mold on them. So the leaves are falling off the trees, but they're not turning. So we're starting to see how different things are being implemented. I didn't spend a lot of time out back this summer, which was kind of a surprise for me because I always spend a lot of time outside, whether I'm listening to a podcast, it doesn't matter what I'm doing, but I spend a lot of time outside. But this year I got no. And I don't think it's any other reason than I don't trust the air quality. In the summer when it's hot, I walk in the bush more so than in the meadows because I want to be out of the heat. So I can still get around that. But we have a major problem here, and we should maybe finish up. We've been talking for a while, but I want to finish up energetically what I think is happening. So these are the human chakras.
Yes.
And if you want this, I can give it to you. But we're looking at the restructuring of the physical bottom 3 chakras. They still do not want you in your heart. They want love. Love is a 4-letter word to them. That is what they can't control. You can love somebody and set a boundary with them and not take their crap. Unconditional love is not a vow of abuse, that you're willing to accept that. So my point is they are trying to keep us in these 3 lower chakras, which is your physical, financial well-being, which is your sexuality, which they're making a dog's breakfast of that, and your solar plexus, your willpower. And we all know what this is. We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
This is the LBGT flag minus the third eye. They want your spirituality up your ass and you thinking out your pie hole. This is all done energetically. But when we go back, and I think what Trump is doing is resetting the bottom 3 chakras. Miles, I don't know if he's spiritual to the point he can get us past restructuring the physical. I don't know. I don't care. But at least there's a plan there to start bringing money back to the U.S.
It's who runs these people, who spends the money, who buys them.
So my point is, this is really good to talk, and whether you share this with your secret space people, I'm not I'm just saying they have a role to play too, but maybe we
I
need to
didn't get
change
the
our
word out
messaging.
on time because I was shooting all day yesterday with which was a 400-mile round trip, and I was with Project Veritas until about 11 o'clock. So I had a hell of a long day. So I didn't
So
get things out.
it's important that we talk about this, but not let it rule us.
Yes, absolutely.
That's that would be
Well,
my advice.
until
You know,
next time, Sandy
there
Glaze,
you
it's
go.
good to see you.
Yes, good to see you too, Miles.
Good.
Take good care, my friend.